All right, listen closely, because what I'm about to break down for you is not just some political gossip, not some surface-level news headline you scroll past on your phone and forget 2 minutes later. This is the kind of thing that rewrites the way you think about leadership, about power, about timing, and about how one man, with one word, can flip the chessboard on someone who thought they had the whole game locked in their favor. We're talking about Jaishankar, and we're talking about the moment he dismantled Trump's India plans without raising his voice, without holding a rally, without signing a stack of new laws. Just with one word now, let's rewind. For years, Donald Trump positioned himself as the deal maker. That's his brand, walking into a room and making the other side believe they've got no choice but to agree with him. And when it came to India, Trump had a plan. Oh, it was slick, it was well packaged, and it was designed to make America look like the big brother guiding the up and coming younger sibling. The plan was simple: tie India deeper into U.S. trade terms, create dependency in critical sectors, and then pull the strings whenever it was convenient. That's not me being dramatic. That's how power works. You make someone think they need you more than you need them, and then you own the relationship. Trump thought he had it. He had the optics, the photo ops, the rallies in India with cheering crowds, the Howdy Modi event. It all looked like a perfect setup. In his mind, the groundwork was laid for America to shape India's economic and defense decisions for years to come. But here's the thing about trying to box in a country like India. It's not a short-term game. You can't charm your way into controlling a 5,000-year-old civilization that has outlasted empires, colonizers, and economic crises. India doesn't forget, and its foreign policy under Jaishankar is not built for applause, it's built for the long haul. See, Jaishankar isn't the kind of leader who jumps at every opportunity to be in the headlines. He's surgical, he studies people, he lets them talk, he listens to what they don't say, and then, when the timing is perfect, he moves. And when Trump's plan was finally ready to turn into action, when the deal terms were supposed to shift in America's favor, Jaishankar showed up and ended it all with a single word, just one. And I'm telling you right now, it wasn't even an aggressive word. It wasn't a no, it wasn't a never. It was something so precise, so carefully chosen, that it cut through all the performance and landed directly in the part of the conversation that mattered most. The part where leverage lives. That's the thing about words. Most people think power comes from the number of words you say, from the speeches you give, from the documents you sign. But in real negotiations, in high-stakes geopolitical conversations, power comes from restraint. It comes from saying the thing that shifts the frame, that makes the other side suddenly realize they're not in control anymore. And that's exactly what happened. Trump walked into that conversation thinking he was about to lock India into his vision for how trade, defense, and policy coordination should go. But that one word made it clear: India was not going to play the role of the grateful partner. In someone else's playbook, the effect was immediate. You could see it, not in public, not in front of the cameras, but behind closed doors, in the sudden shift in tone from the American side. All that confidence, all that "we've got this handled" energy, it drained away. Because here's the secret: when you're dealing with someone who knows exactly where your leverage points are, one well-placed word can make you rethink your entire strategy. Jaishankar didn't need to argue. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to explain why India wasn't going to be cornered. That one word carried the full weight of India's independence, its economic resilience, its strategic alliances, and its refusal to be reduced to a pawn. And the best part? It wasn't just about Trump. This was a message to every major power watching from the sidelines: Europe, China, Russia, the Gulf states, that India was stepping into a new era of self-definition. No more bending to special terms. that benefit the other side more than they benefit India. No more being the junior partner in a trade deal that looks fair on paper but bleeds you dry in reality. This was about signaling a doctrine, a new set of unwritten rules for how India would engage in the world, as an equal, or not at all. What made this moment so powerful was how subtle it was. Most people missed it. They were too busy watching the big headlines, the obvious moves, the grand gestures, but subtlety is where real power hides. It's like in martial arts. The most dangerous fighter isn't the one throwing wild punches. It's the one who waits, watches, and then strikes in exactly the right place at exactly the right moment. Jaishankar'S word did that. It landed in a way that made Trump and the entire American negotiation team realize that their carefully built plan had just collapsed in on itself. And you know what happens when a leader does something like that. It has a ripple effect. It changes how other countries approach you. Suddenly, you're not just another nation trying to get a good deal. You're the nation that stood its ground against one of the most forceful deal-makers in the modern political era, and did it without breaking a sweat. That reputation is priceless. It means in future negotiations, people think twice before trying to box you in. It means allies respect you more because they know you can stand your ground. And it means adversaries have to reconsider whether pushing you is worth the risk. This wasn't just a victory in one negotiation. It was a shift in the balance of power. Trump's India plans weren't just delayed, they were dismantled. And more importantly, they were dismantled in a way that couldn't be spun as a misunderstanding or a temporary disagreement. No, this was crystal clear. India was not going to be dictated to, and that clarity is what changes the game long term. Because once you establish that precedent, it becomes part of your identity on the global stage. Every nation that comes to the table with you has to respect that boundary, whether they like it or not. And here's something I want you to really think about. This was not an accident. Jaishankar didn't stumble into this moment. He's been preparing for moments like this his entire career. His experience, his knowledge of global systems, his understanding of cultural and political nuances, this was all part of the arsenal. And just like a master strategist, he didn't waste ammunition. He used the smallest possible amount of force to achieve the maximum possible effect. That's the kind of leadership that doesn't just win battles. It changes the terrain so the other side can't even fight the same way again. Now imagine you're Trump in that moment. You've built up this whole plan, you've got your advisors telling you it's airtight, you've even got a personal rapport with the other country's leader, and then in a split second, one word erases all of it. That's not just a setback, that's a wake-up call, and I'll tell you this much, whether Trump would admit it or not, that moment stuck with him, because when someone beats you that cleanly, you don't forget it. And every time you deal with them again, you remember exactly what they're capable of. The beauty of it is that Jaishankar didn't have to follow up with threats, ultimatums, or draw, not counter-arguments. The word did the work. It carried an unspoken truth. India knew its value, and it wasn't about to trade it away for the illusion of favor from anyone, even the President of the United States. That's the kind of unshakable confidence that you can't fake. And when a country operates from that place of self-assurance, it becomes a force that others have to reckon with in the days and weeks after. You could see the shift in how discussions with India were framed. There was more caution, more respect in the language being used. Other nations started referencing India not just as a partner, but as a power in its own right. And that's how you know the move worked. Because power isn't about saying, I'm powerful. It's about others treating you like you are, whether they say it out loud or not. That's what Jaishankar secured for India in that moment. That's why this will be remembered not as a small footnote in the history of U.S.-India relations, but as a turning point in how India is approached by the world's most influential leaders, so don't get distracted by the noise. The handshakes, the photo ops, the smiling press conferences, their theater. The real game happens in the quiet moments, in the words that land like lightning strikes, in the subtle shifts that change the direction of history without anyone noticing until it's already happened. Jaishankar's one word wasn't just a reply, it was a declaration, and if you know how to listen, you can still hear the echo of it in every deal India makes today, because here's the truth, power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and when it whispers at the right time, in the right room, to the right person, it can shatter even the most carefully built plans. Just ask Trump. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine backed by innovation, the moment marking India's entry into an era of unapologetic global leadership was not just a reaction to a single event, but the culmination of years of careful preparation, silent observation, and deliberate strategy that the world had failed to fully notice until it was already too late to counter. For decades, India had been seen through a lens crafted by others, often as a nation with potential but hesitant to fully assert itself, a country with strong cultural roots and moral values, but reluctant to shake the global order in a way that could disrupt established power centers. Yet beneath the surface, within the quiet corridors of decision-making, a different India had been growing, a nation aware of its strength, confident in its capabilities, and increasingly unwilling to accept the narratives written for it by others. The moment Jaishankar's stance crystallized on the global stage was when that quiet, disciplined patience transformed into a bold declaration that India would no longer play by the old rules simply because they were old. The military doctrine that emerged from this shift was unlike anything India had adopted before. It was not only about matching military firepower with rivals. It was about integrating technology, indigenous production, and strategic diplomacy into a single cohesive framework that could defend India's sovereignty and project its influence without unnecessary noise. This doctrine embraced deterrence through preparedness, power through self-reliance, and influence through strategic partnerships that aligned with India's national interest, rather than simply appeasing global superpowers. India's defense innovation strategy became the backbone of this doctrine. The country accelerated indigenous weapons programs, not to simply mimic foreign designs, but to create technology tailored for its specific defense needs and geography. The development of advanced missile systems, stealth capabilities, electronic warfare units, and unmanned aerial systems was no longer an ambition. It was a directive. Each advancement sent a clear message to adversaries and allies alike. India could defend itself, and it would do so on its own terms. But what truly set this moment apart was the unapologetic manner in which it was presented to the world. There was no attempt to sugarcoat the reality, no diplomatic overpolishing to make the stance more palatable for foreign powers. India was direct, its security was non-negotiable, its interests were paramount, and its partnerships would be based on equality rather than dependency. This unapologetic posture extended beyond the military into economic and diplomatic spheres. Trade negotiations shifted from a defensive tone to one of confident bargaining. India began leveraging its massive consumer base, strategic location, and growing technological expertise as tools of influence. The idea was simple but powerful. Those who wanted access to India's markets and cooperation would have to respect its sovereignty and strategic choices. This was not arrogance. It was the natural evolution of a country that had been underestimated for too long. India's leadership made it clear that the days of being a passive participant in global politics were over. The world could either adapt to the reality of a powerful, independent India or risk losing the opportunity to engage with it on favorable terms. Geopolitically, this shift caused ripples that quickly turned into waves. Old alliances were re-examined, and new strategic partnerships began forming. Nations that had once taken India's diplomatic silence as weakness were forced to rethink their approach. Those who had relied on India's compliance in international forums suddenly faced a partner who was willing to veto, walk away, or set its own conditions. In military terms, India's assertive doctrine also emphasized rapid response capabilities and forward deployment in key strategic areas. From the Himalayas to the Indian Ocean, the country positioned itself to protect its borders, sea lanes, and regional influence without waiting for external mediation. This readiness, backed by technological innovation, made any potential adversary think twice before testing India's resolve. What made this transformation even more impactful was the consistency with which it was applied. This was not a one-off show of strength. It was the new standard. Every diplomatic engagement, every trade agreement, and every military exercise reinforced the same message: India was now operating as a global leader, not as a regional power seeking validation. This leadership was unapologetic because it was built on the recognition that national interest is not something to be negotiated away for temporary goodwill. It was about protecting the future of over 1 billion people, ensuring that India's development path remained free from external coercion, and using every available tool, economic, technological, and military, to maintain that freedom. The psychological shift in both domestic and global perception was profound. Within India, there was a renewed sense of pride and ownership over the nation's destiny. Citizens saw that their country was no longer being spoken for by others, but was speaking for itself and doing so with authority. Internationally, even critics acknowledged that India's voice had grown too significant to ignore. The unapologetic stance did not mean unnecessary confrontation. It meant calculated confidence. When India said yes, it meant yes on its own terms. When it said no, it was not afraid to stand alone if necessary. This combination of innovation, backed military readiness, and clear, confident diplomacy created a strategic environment where India was not just reacting to global events, but actively shaping them. And perhaps the most telling sign of this new era was how quickly the world adjusted to it. Negotiators began approaching India with more respect. Military planners factored in India's capabilities when drafting strategies, and global markets recognized the stability that came from India's newfound decisiveness. What began as a single moment, a carefully chosen stance in a high-stakes diplomatic setting, became the defining pivot point for a nation ready to embrace its role not as a follower of global power structures, but as one of their architects. Every decision made after that moment carried the weight of a country that understood its value, knew its strengths, and refused to hide either from the world or from itself. This was not just India stepping up, it was India stepping forward on a path that would no longer be dictated from outside its borders, but charted from within, with the confidence of a leader that had arrived and had no intention of stepping back.